My dad confined me and my sibling in the cellar for 6 years, labeling us as monsters, and later attempted to lower us into a mining pit to complete his scheme. When I questioned my mother about why she observed everything without intervening, she merely gazed at her mug and remarked, "Beds are meant for individuals who count." I remained silent. That occurred 9 years back. Recently, she passed away in a care facility with nobody attending her burial. "How did you realize your dad wasn't female, Father?" My dad imprisoned all his girls in the cellar since he claimed females didn't merit exposure to daylight. By the moment I broke free, I'd existed in shadows for 6 years. Father had consistently viewed women as possessions. He forced Mother to rest on the kitchen tiles because beds are reserved for those who are important. He forbade us girls from dining at the dining area, insisting we ought to appreciate leftovers on the floor. When I experienced my initial menstruation at 12, he declared I was now utterly valueless and required concealment where nobody could witness my disgrace. He'd call us the underground beasts and force us to hide our faces whenever we needed to ascend because our feminine traits could taint his boys. When my sibling Faith reached 13, Father declared we were becoming too mature to pollute the higher levels. He'd completed updating the cellar with external locks. "Females are suited for below ground," he stated. "Similar to earthworms, you'll adapt to existence without illumination." He shoved us down the steps and secured the entrance. Mother observed from the cooking area, uttering nothing. She'd been shattered long before. The cellar included a commode, a basin, and 2 pads on the cement surface. No openings, no illumination except one lamp Father managed from above. He'd activate it for a single hour daily as we consumed whatever provisions he tossed down the steps. The remaining period, we endured in total obscurity. Faith and I clutched hands non-stop, fearful of separating in the void. Residing subterranean eroded us gradually. Our vision became extremely reactive that the everyday hour of brightness turned into torment. Our complexion became ashen from absence of sun. We forgot the passage of time, unaware if it was daylight or nighttime overhead. Father would occasionally abandon us in blackness for multiple days as discipline until we pleaded via the entrance. He'd chuckle and claim burrowers didn't require brightness regardless. We were permitted above once monthly for 10 minutes to bathe. Father would cover our eyes initially, stating we didn't merit viewing his residence. Faith suffered extreme vitamin D shortage, her skeleton weakening until movement grew agonizing. I began experiencing anxiety episodes in the gloom, breathing rapidly until I fainted. Father accused us of exaggeration and reduced our illumination period to 30 minutes. Following 3 years below, Faith became ill. Severely ill. She suffered a persistent high temperature, expelling blood in the shadows. I hammered on the entrance for hours, imploring for assistance. Father eventually descended, glanced at her briefly, and accused her of pretending. But upon her convulsions starting, even he became alarmed. He couldn't allow her demise in his cellar. He covered our eyes and transported Faith above. I overheard him instruct Mother to contact their acquaintance who worked as a caregiver. Not an actual medical center. Upon the caregiver's arrival, I heard her exclaim in shock. She insisted on knowing why a 16-year-old female appeared as if she'd been confined in a cavern. Father explained we possessed an uncommon ailment rendering us sensitive to sunlight. The caregiver doubted him but provided care nonetheless. She murmured to me that she'd return. The caregiver notified authorities, and protective services arrived the following day. Father attempted to block their access to the cellar, asserting it was inundated. But they forced by him and discovered our confinement. The examiners were appalled. They recorded all details. The container we utilized when the commode overflowed. The marks on the barriers where we'd attempted to tally days. The stained imprints on the entrance from when I'd hammered until my palms bled. We were extracted promptly and admitted to hospital. Physicians stated we exhibited nutrient shortages typical of abduction survivors. Our vision was so impaired from obscurity that we needed specialized lenses. Faith's skeleton was fragile like that of an aged female. But we were liberated. Father was detained, and mother was considered unsuitable. We moved to a placement residence with openings all around. I believed we were secure. I was rediscovering how to function in brightness. How to stroll outdoors without distress. Faith was improving. Then one evening, I awoke to discover Father looming over my sleeping area. He'd secured release and infiltrated. "You believe you can reside here with genuine individuals?" he murmured. "You're underground monsters. You fit in the shadows." He administered a substance that rendered my body sluggish. I attempted to yell but managed only a murmur. He transported me to his vehicle, where Faith was already insensible in the rear. While driving, he outlined his fresh scheme. He'd acquired land in a different region with an ancient mining tunnel. 60 feet below surface, he mentioned. "Nobody will detect your cries there. Nobody will locate you." I struggled to remain alert as he depicted the tunnel. No steps. Merely a cord. No commode. Just a container on a hoist. No illumination whatsoever. Permanently. "You desired to depart the cellar," he remarked. So I located something more profound. He'd already hurled our items into the tunnel. Supplies and liquid for perhaps a month. Following that, we'd perish in the gloom unless we became appreciative. The vehicle halted on vacant terrain. I could observe the timber lid over the mining tunnel in the beams. Father pulled Faith out initially. She was beginning to rouse, whispering my name. He uncovered the tunnel lid, and I detected nothing but empty void beneath. "Females precede," he stated, encircling the cord around Faith. "Don't fret. You'll possess one another. For whatever duration you endure." As he commenced descending my sibling into the infinite shadows, she cried my name, the noise reverberating from the abyss. I attempted to inch toward them, but my medicated limbs failed. All I managed was observing as my sibling vanished into the dark abyss, her cries diminishing. Father faced me with a cord, grinning. "Your opportunity," he remarked. "Time to return." My digits scraped the soil, seeking anything to clutch as Father neared with a cord. The chemicals rendered everything seem like navigating dense liquid. Faith's fearful tone echoed from the tunnel, repeating my name. Each shout weaker than before. Father encircled the cord around my midsection, his movement systematic and familiar. I flailed feebly, succeeding in dislodging his grip. But he merely chuckled and seized my arms. The beams from his vehicle projected elongated shades across the desolate soil, rendering the tunnel entrance appear even murkier. I clamped down firmly on his limb when he bent near. He swore and struck me across the face, causing sparkles in my sight. The coppery flavor of blood permeated my mouth. As he tended his limb, I tumbled laterally, distant from the tunnel. My limb still refused full cooperation, but surge of energy countered some of the chemical's effect. He clutched my foot and hauled me back to the opening. I embedded my nails into the soil, creating furrows in the earth. Tiny stones abraded my hands. The cord around my midsection constricted as he began fastening it more firmly. From far in the tunnel, Faith had become silent. The quietude was more dreadful than her cries. I struck with my unbound leg, impacting Father in the joint. He faltered but retained hold. Instead, he positioned on my limbs, immobilizing them while completing the cord securement. The tunnel entrance was mere feet distant now. I sensed the chilly breeze ascending from it, detected the moist soil and rot. Father examined the cord, ensuring its strength. He linked it to the vehicle's guard, intending to descend me gradually like with Faith. I seized a fistful of soil and hurled it at his face. He choked and cleared his vision, granting me moments to manipulate the cord tie. My digits were awkward from the chemicals, but urgency propelled them. The tie relaxed marginally before he regained composure and struck my hands aside. He hauled me to the precise brink of the tunnel. My limbs swung over the boundary, striking only atmosphere. I observed the cord vanishing into the obscurity where Faith had descended. Father situated himself rearward, prepared to thrust. I rotated abruptly, employing my remaining power to clutch his garment. If I was descending, I'd drag him along. But he anticipated that. He detached my digits sequentially, then propelled me rearward. For an instant, I suspended at the boundary, partially inside and partially outside the tunnel. My hands located a sturdy stem emerging from the side. I clung desperately while Father attempted to force me completely down. The stem was aged and somewhat decayed, already beginning to detach from the soil. Father crushed my digits. I yelled, but refused release. He crushed again, and I sensed bones fracture. The agony dispelled some chemical haze from my thoughts. I oscillated my limbs, seeking any support on the tunnel barriers. My foot contacted something firm, a stone outcrop just beneath the entrance. I pressed on it, elevating myself mildly. Father bent to detach my fractured digits from the stem. His face was near enough that I detected the brew on his exhale. I ejected blood into his vision and lifted myself with my intact hand. He recoiled, providing space to position my elbows on firm soil. But the chemicals and fatigue were prevailing. My arms trembled intensely, scarcely sustaining my mass. Father regained and seized the cord still bound around my midsection. Rather than thrusting me, he began elevating me up and away from the tunnel. I comprehended his intention. He aimed to align me optimally for a precise descent. No opportunity to seize stems or locate supports if he released me from the middle. I became inert, rendering myself heavy burden. He groaned with exertion, hauling me over the soil. The cord chafed against my flesh through my clothing. When he halted to modify his hold, I tumbled sharply to the side, entangling the cord around his limbs. He stumbled and descended on one joint. I continued tumbling, encircling additional cord around him. He attempted to extricate, but merely ensnared further. His irritation escalated, rendering him imprudent. While he labored to liberate his limbs, I inched toward his vehicle. My fractured digits agonized with each motion, but I compelled progression. If I reached the operator's position, perhaps I could depart, obtain aid for Faith. Father liberated himself and pursued. He intercepted me at the vehicle's guard, where the cord's opposite end was fastened. He compressed my face against the chilled steel, employing his mass to restrain me. The posture inspired an idea. I clutched the cord at its connection to the guard and tugged forcefully. The abrupt strain caused Father to waver. I tugged again, utilizing the cord as a hoist mechanism. He needed to retreat to maintain equilibrium. I persisted tugging, compelling him to distance from me. The cord between us became rigid. He recognized my action and advanced, but I flattened to the soil. He stumbled over me and collided with the vehicle's guard solidly. While he was stunned, I manipulated the tie linking the cord to the guard. This one was less complex than the midsection one. My intact hand fiddled with it while my fractured digits pulsed ineffectively. Father cleared his mind and reached for me once more. I struck rearward, impacting him in the abdomen. He bent double, wheezing. The tie released in my grasp. Now the cord was solely attached to me, not the vehicle. I commenced inching away from the tunnel, trailing the cord behind. Father recuperated and trod on the cord, halting me abruptly. He started hauling me back to the opening, palm over palm, as if reeling a catch. My intact hand located a pointed stone. I seized it and began cutting at the cord around my midsection. The threads were dense and resilient. Father hauled more intensely, sliding me through the soil. My clothing elevated and stones grazed my abdomen bare. The tunnel entrance approached nearer. I cut desperately at the cord, sensing some threads yield. Father executed a powerful haul that shifted me multiple feet simultaneously. My limbs neared the boundary again. I released the stone and clutched a minor shrub near the tunnel. Its foundations were superficial, and it began detaching instantly. But it decelerated me sufficiently to seize another grip, a semi-interred wheel from ancient unlawful disposal. Father approached closer, maintaining the cord tight. He was finished with amusements. His expression displayed icy resolve as he readied for a concluding thrust. I encircled my arms around the wheel, aware it was my final support. He jerked the cord fiercely. The power shifted me inches, but the wheel endured. He jerked again, more forcefully. I sensed my hold diminishing. My fractured digits couldn't assist in clinging. The chemicals still rendered everything blurred and sluggish. From deep in the tunnel, I detected Faith expel air. She remained living below, awaiting my rescue or companionship. The noise provided a burst of frantic vigor. When Father hauled again, I abruptly released the wheel and charged toward him rather than opposing. The unforeseen looseness in the cord caused him to stagger rearward. I collided with his limbs, toppling him. We tumbled in the soil, battling for dominance. He was more powerful, but the chemicals influenced my discomfort reaction as well. I couldn't sense many impacts he delivered. My fractured digits curved incorrectly when I attempted to seize him, but I persisted combating. He ultimately restrained me, positioned on my torso. His hands moved to the cord, preparing to haul me the concluding feat. The tunnel entrance was adjacent now. I could observe celestial lights in the dark circle, distant above where Faith must be. I recalled something from our cellar years. Father invariably stored his vehicle keys in his left forward compartment. Invariably. It was a routine Faith and I had committed to memory during monthly ascents, constantly seeking details that could assist someday. My intact hand darted to his compartment. He tried to obstruct, but I possessed the keys already. I gripped them firmly, the metallic borders slicing my hand. Then I hurled them with maximum force into the tunnel's obscurity. The keys vanished without a trace, engulfed by the void. Father's expression shifted from bewilderment to fury as he grasped what I'd done. Without those keys, the van was useless. We were stranded far from civilization, on land he'd purchased covertly. His getaway plan was ruined. He bellowed and seized my neck with both hands. I scratched at his arms with my functioning hand while my shattered fingers dangled limply. Dark spots flickered across my sight, deeper than the pit nearby. The pressure on my throat tightened as Father's face contorted with wrath above me. My vision narrowed, but I forced my good hand to keep searching, groping the ground blindly. My fingers found a small pebble, and I swung it feebly at his temple. The blow was weak, but it caused him to shift his weight slightly. That shift was enough. I thrust my hips upward, using the momentum to roll us sideways. We tumbled perilously close to the pit's edge. Father released my neck to brace himself, and I gasped for air, my lungs searing. The drug still weighed heavily in my system, but adrenaline and oxygen deprivation sharpened my focus a bit. Father stood first, striking my ribs with his foot as he rose. I curled inward, shielding my abdomen while struggling to breathe. He circled me like a hunter, his breathing heavy with effort and anger. The van's headlights cast stark shadows across his face, making him appear even more monstrous. I tried to rise, but my legs gave out. The drugs made my muscles feel like liquid. Father grabbed my hair and began pulling me back toward the pit. Each tug sent sharp pains through my scalp. I dug my heels into the soil, creating resistance, but he was too powerful. My good hand found another stone, larger this time. I twisted in his grasp and slammed it down on his foot with all my remaining strength. He yelled and let go of my hair, hopping in pain. I crawled away as quickly as I could, which was painfully slow. The rope still tied around my waist trailed behind, snagging on rocks and roots. Father recovered and grabbed the rope, using it to pull me back. I flipped onto my back and kicked at him with both feet. One kick struck his shin, but it barely slowed him. He wrapped the rope around his hand for a better grip and yanked harder. I remembered the sharp stone I'd used to cut the rope earlier. It had to be close. My hands swept the ground desperately as Father dragged me nearer to the pit. My fingers found it just as my feet reached the edge again. I sawed at the rope with frantic urgency. Father saw what I was doing and lunged, trying to snatch the stone. I rolled away, keeping the stone pressed against the rope, feeling more fibers break. He grabbed my wrist and squeezed until I thought it would shatter, but I held on. We fought for the stone. Father's strength was overpowering, but then I heard Faith's voice from the pit, faint but alive. The sound distracted him for a moment. I yanked my hand free and slashed the stone across his forearm, drawing blood. He swore and pulled back, checking the wound. I used that moment to cut through the last strands of rope. It fell away from my waist, freeing me from its tether. But the drug still slowed me, and we both knew it. Father's expression shifted from rage to calculation. He walked to the van and returned with a flashlight, aiming it down the pit. I heard him muttering about the depth and checking the rope Faith was tied to. The light beam vanished into the darkness without reaching the bottom. I tried crawling toward the van while he was distracted, but my movements were sluggish. Father heard me and turned, his face now eerily calm, more terrifying than his anger. He approached and grabbed my ankle, dragging me back toward the pit with deliberate patience. My fingers clawed at the ground, finding a gnarled tree root. Father pulled harder, and I felt my shoulder strain from holding on. He stepped on my hand, grinding it into the dirt. I stifled a scream and gripped tighter. He pressed harder until I had to let go. This time, he dragged me to a different side of the pit, where the ground was smoother, with fewer roots or rocks to grasp. He positioned me at the edge again, but instead of pushing me right away, he sat beside me, catching his breath. He described his new plan in detail, explaining how he'd lower me slowly, letting me hang before dropping me completely. He wanted me to dwell on my mistakes, on how I'd brought this on myself by trying to live above ground. I used his speech to let the drugs wear off further. My mind was clearing slightly, though my limbs remained heavy. I flexed my fingers and toes, testing my control. It wasn't much, but maybe enough. Father stood and lifted me under my arms, holding me partially over the pit. My legs dangled over the edge, the cold air from below chilling me. He held me there, suspended between ground and abyss, relishing his dominance. I went limp, becoming dead weight in his hands. The sudden shift forced him to adjust his grip, pulling me slightly forward. I used that momentum to hook my leg around his knee and pull. He stumbled but didn't fall, dropping me onto solid ground to regain his balance. I rolled away from the edge and struggled to my hands and knees. Father kicked me in the stomach, knocking the air out of me. I collapsed, gasping, but kept rolling to put distance between us and the pit. He followed slowly, knowing I couldn't escape far. The drugs were fading, but not quickly enough. My broken fingers pulsed with each heartbeat. Blood coated my tongue from where I'd bitten it during the struggle. Father grabbed my hair again and dragged me back. This time, he aligned me parallel to the pit's edge, planning to roll me in sideways. I twisted in his grip, making it harder for him to control me. He struck me hard across the face, making my ears ring. The blow actually helped clear my mind further. Pain was cutting through the drug haze. I focused on that clarity, using it to strategize. Father was tiring too. His movements were slower, his breathing more ragged. He was older, out of shape from years of unchallenged control in his home. Talk about flipping the script with a rope trick. I went from being bound like a parcel to using that same rope like a twisted game of tug-of-war, making Father stumble backward like he's in a clumsy dance. Then I dropped flat, making him crash face first into the van's bumper. He tried to roll me toward the pit, but I spread my arms and legs wide, making myself hard to move. He grunted, trying to force my limbs together. I kept spreading them out again every time he shifted focus. Frustrated, he straddled me, using his weight to pin me. His hands reached for my throat again, but I was ready. I tucked my chin and bit his hand hard when it got close. He jerked back, shaking his hand in pain. I used his distraction to drive my knee up hard between his legs. He doubled over, rolling off me with a groan. I crawled away as fast as I could, faster than before. The drugs were wearing off, though I was still far from normal. Father recovered quicker than I'd hoped. He grabbed my ankle just as I reached the van's rear tire. I kicked back with my free foot, hitting his chest. He held on, but the blow pushed him back slightly. I kicked repeatedly, each strike weaker but still keeping him at bay. He changed tactics, grabbing both my ankles and dragging me backward. I twisted onto my back and sat up, reaching for his face. My broken fingers were useless, but my good hand found his eyes. I pressed my thumb into his eye socket, forcing him to release my legs to shield his face. I scrambled under the van, hoping the tight space would hinder him. Father dropped to his knees, reaching beneath the vehicle. His arms were longer, and he grabbed my shirt. The fabric began to tear as he pulled. I wrapped my arms around the van's drive shaft, holding on as my shirt ripped away. Father cursed and reached further, trying for a better grip. I kicked at his hands, striking his fingers. He pulled back, then tried from another angle. The ground under the van was littered with oil stains and debris. I found a jagged piece of metal, likely from an old exhaust. I gripped it like a blade, slashing at Father's hands whenever they neared. He recoiled after a solid hit, his palm bleeding. He stood and circled the van, trying to anticipate my exit. I stayed centered, watching his feet shift from side to side. His impatience made his movements predictable. When he moved to the passenger side, I quickly crawled out the driver's side. I pulled myself up using the van's mirror, my legs shaky but working. Father came around the front, his face a mask of cold rage. Blood dripped from his hand and arm where I'd cut him. His clothes were filthy and torn from our fight. He advanced slowly, pushing me toward the pit again. I sidled along the van, keeping it between us. We circled like a deadly game of chase. My legs grew stronger each minute, but I was still too slow to outrun him. Father abruptly changed direction, catching me off guard. He grabbed my arm as I tried to backtrack. His bloody hand smeared red on my skin. I twisted in his grip, using a move I'd seen in a film during our brief foster care time. It wasn't perfect, but it loosened his hold enough for me to break free. I stumbled backward, my foot catching on something. It was the rope that had been around my waist earlier. An idea sparked through the clearing drug fog. I grabbed the rope and ran around the van, Father close behind. I looped the rope around the front bumper as I passed, then continued to the rear. Father followed, unaware of my plan. I wrapped the rope around the rear bumper too, creating a tripwire. When Father came around the back, his foot caught the rope, and he fell hard. His head struck the ground with a dull thud. He lay still, dazed. I seized the moment. I grabbed the flashlight he dropped and smashed it down on his knee. He screamed and curled up, clutching his leg. I backed away, gripping the flashlight like a weapon. Father tried to stand, but his injured knee collapsed. He fell back, cursing. I saw the calculation in his eyes as he reassessed. I was more mobile now, and he was hurt. He began crawling toward me, dragging himself with his arms. His resolve was terrifying. Even injured, he wouldn't stop. I backed up, keeping distance while searching for another weapon or advantage. My back hit something solid. The wooden pit cover, propped against a rock where Father had left it. I glanced between him and the heavy disc. It was thick, probably 40 or 50 pounds. In my weakened state, I wasn't sure I could lift it. Father saw my gaze and crawled faster. I grabbed the cover's edge and strained to lift it. My muscles burned, still weak from the drugs. The cover lifted a few inches, then fell back. Father was nearly within reach. I tried again, putting everything into lifting the cover. This time, I got it to knee height before my strength failed. It fell toward Father, who rolled aside just in time. The heavy wood crashed where he'd been. He used the van to pull himself up, balancing on his good leg. I stumbled toward the open pit, hoping to use it as a barrier. My legs moved in an unsteady lurch, but it was faster than his limping hobble. I reached the pit and turned to face him. He leaned on the van for support, inching toward me. The hole yawned behind me, Faith's faint whimpers echoing from below. I threw a rock at Father. My aim was poor, but it made him duck. He let go of the van and hopped toward me on one leg, arms outstretched for balance. It would have been absurd if it weren't so horrifying. Even injured, even hopping, he pursued me with relentless focus. I threw another rock, hitting his shoulder. He grunted but kept coming. I backed up until my heels were at the pit's edge. One misstep, and I'd join Faith in the darkness. Father saw my position and grinned. He lunged, trying to push me backward. I sidestepped at the last moment, and his momentum carried him to the edge. He flailed his arms, trying to regain balance. I could have pushed him then. One small nudge, and he'd have fallen, but I froze. That pause cost me. Father fell forward onto solid ground instead of backward into the pit. He grabbed my ankle as he fell, pulling me down with him. We hit the ground hard, him partially on top of me. His weight pressed me into the dirt. I struggled beneath him, but he had the advantage now. His hands found my throat again. This time, I had nothing within reach to fight back. My vision darkened at the edges. In desperation, I drove my knee into his injured knee. He screamed and rolled off, clutching his leg. I gasped for air, my throat feeling crushed. Every breath burned, but I forced myself to keep moving. I crawled toward the van, thinking of Faith still trapped below. I had to survive to save her. Father's hand caught my foot just as I reached the van's tire. His grip was weaker, but still resolute. I kicked back, my heel striking his face. I heard his nose break with a sickening crunch. He let go, hands flying to his face. Blood poured between his fingers. He tried to speak, but only gurgled. I pulled myself up using the van's door handle. My legs trembled but held. I looked back at Father, still on the ground, blood pooling beneath him. He rolled onto his side, spitting blood. His eyes met mine, still burning with rage despite his injuries. He tried to stand, but his knee gave out. He crawled again, leaving a bloody trail in the dirt. I stumbled to the driver's door and tried the handle. Locked, of course. The keys were somewhere at the pit's bottom. I searched frantically for something to break the window. Father was getting closer, his crawling relentless despite his pain. I found a large rock near the front tire. I lifted it, my arms trembling with effort, the keys vanished silently into the abyss. Father's face twisted from shock to fury as he realized what I'd done. Without those keys, the van was immobile. We were stranded in the middle of nowhere, on land he'd secretly acquired. His escape plan was ruined. He roared and clamped his hands around my throat. I scratched at his arms with my good hand, my broken fingers dangling uselessly. Dark patches clouded my vision, blacker than the pit beside us. The pressure on my neck intensified as Father's face loomed above, warped with rage. My sight blurred, but I forced my working hand to keep search. The ground blindly. My fingers grazed a small stone, and I swung it weakly at his temple. The hit was feeble, but it made him shift his weight slightly. That was enough. I thrust my hips upward, rolling us sideways. We tumbled dangerously close to the pit's rim. Father released my throat to steady himself, and I gasped for air, my lungs burning. The drug still lingered heavily, but adrenaline and oxygen starvation sharpened my senses slightly. Father stood first, kicking my ribs as he rose. I curled inward, shielding my stomach while struggling to breathe. He stalked around me like a predator, his breathing heavy with effort and anger. The van's headlights cast harsh shadows across his face, amplifying his menacing presence. I tried to stand, but my legs collapsed. The drugs made my muscles feel like liquid. Father seized my hair and dragged me back toward the pit. Each pull sent sharp pain through my scalp. I dug my heels into the dirt, resisting, but he was too strong. My good hand found another rock, larger this time. I twisted in his grip and slammed it down on his foot with all my strength. He bellowed and released my hair, hopping in pain. I crawled away as fast as I could, which was agonizingly slow. The rope still tied around my waist trailed behind, catching on rocks and roots. Father recovered and grabbed the rope, reeling me back. I flipped onto my back and kicked at him with both feet. One kick hit his shin, but it barely slowed him. He wrapped the rope around his hand for a better grip and yanked harder. I recalled the sharp rock I'd used to cut the rope earlier. It had to be nearby. My hands frantically swept the ground as Father dragged me closer to the pit. My fingers found it just as my feet neared the edge again that I hacked at the rope with desperate ferocity. Father saw and lunged, trying to snatch the rock. I rolled away, pressing the rock against the rope, feeling more strands snap. He grabbed my wrist and squeezed until I thought it would break.